post it. It took a while. Sorry. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
No, I don't know. I'll talk to her. Yeah.
Hello?
Yep, you're on.
Yeah,
Okay.
You're live.
I'm live. Okay. So I need to open
Hello, Miss Lasan.
everybody's here. Okay. I would like to announce that a quorum is present. The meeting is duly called and notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with the Texas Open Meetings Act. The time is now 5:32 p.m. In order to maintain a social distancing and other health protocols at public gatherings, a limited number of staff and community members will be in-person attendees at this evening's regular board meeting. The following board members are in attendance: Tracy Miller, Allison Lasan, Angie Cox, Christy Hassett, Jenny Prosnick, and Catherine Sells. Would you please bow your head with me as I lead us in a word of prayer? Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight, and I just pray that you open our minds and open our hearts to what we are about to hear, that you give us wisdom, and that you are with all of the people in our community who are still being affected by the pandemic that is going on around us. And I just thank you so much for our staff and our teachers and our administrators who are still putting their all into what is going on and to making sure that our kids are still getting the education that they deserve, the education that they have a right to. I pray that tonight that our words are kind and are full of just knowledge that we have as trustees, and our questions are useful to others as well as ourselves. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
And it's World Teachers Day.
Yeah, and it is World Teachers Day. Woohoo! So thanks to all of our teachers now and in the present and past, and those that are in the future that want to come back and teach in our schools. So we appreciate you. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the Texas Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. First up is Dr. Rogers.
Thank you, Ms. Sells. So the cornerstone tonight is about student experience. I create safe and inclusive opportunities, and about that, know and practice all safety protocols. Absolutely. We continue to have lots of discussions about safety protocols and, things like quarantine and what's the right answer to all these ever-evolving things, but I greatly appreciate that ultimately we're doing what we think is best to keep our students and our staff safe. So,
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Persons desiring to address the Board of Trustees were given the opportunity to fill out a speaker's card prior to this meeting. There were no speaker's cards presented. Up for discussion items, Dr. Rapp.
Yes, Madam President, members of the board. So I'm going to ask that our school chiefs, along with Dr. Miller, come up to talk with you about our Chief of Schools update. That's our first presentation for this evening. And as they're coming up, we're pleased to have this opportunity. This is a new opportunity that we are presenting to you tonight to come before you twice this school year and provide some timely updates. This one will focus on some back to school and other items. Dr. Rogers wants to talk through the first couple of slides, and then we'll turn it over to the team.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity for us to share sort of, what does a chief do and what's a day in the chief life look like, and what I can tell you, it's never the same. But I think back to when I was a principal, and now it's been 12 years since I left the principalship, but before that being a principal both middle school and high school, even back then the job required a lot, but in the last 12 years the expectations for principals has just grown enormously. And then for this year, you add to that COVID and trying to navigate those uncharted waters, and it just adds to it. So I was pleased many years ago to be one of the two leaders, myself and Cheryl Close, to create a coaching program for new principals, which we still do something similar to that. But when I was named principal in 1997 to Arbor Creek Middle School, basically when they called me to tell me, hey, you've been named to my first question was, where is that? Because, it was just generic principal interviews. And so luckily we've gotten a lot better than that. And, but it's these people that their job is to serve campus principals to help them then better serve their staff and their students. And so I'm extremely proud of the job that they do. On this first slide, it just talks about the dozens of duties and being in as many places at the same time. They can't walk down the hall, a principal can't, without getting stopped numerous times. And so how do we make sure that they take care of the needs of their campus, the needs of their students and staff, and yet continue to grow professionally is really what this is all about. And so you're going to hear some of that. So old style supervision versus, really the support to become an effective principal in today's world. And this is a review from what you were provided a couple years ago at our board retreat. But just looking at, the expectation that the majority of their time, we expect them to be in campuses and not just be firefighters, when that situation pops up, even though they have to be firefighters too. We've tried to, with your support, to divvy up, where they have less campuses to supervise. It's still probably, to be honest with you, maybe too many. But, we went, if you remember, when I was the chief operations officer, we had 3 zone leaders. We expanded that to 4 chiefs. And we appreciate that support. And then, of course, the professional learning that they help facilitate, and that the expectation is campus leaders need to lead campus learning. And, of course, they need some support to do that. And so with that, I'm going to punt it back to Dr. Rapp.
So in our presentation this evening, ultimately we wanted to talk through several different items that are all timely pieces right now. We've got those on the slide. So tonight, they're going to talk about what does supporting principals consist of. They have a lot of different things that they do on an ongoing basis, but we'll dive a little bit deeper into the principal evaluation process, some information about targeted improvement plans, and the way that they're holding weekly principal meetings. So, they do a lot of work when it comes to, especially we spent all afternoon about staffing. And you see that's on that second bullet, Ms. Godby, Ms. Litchfield, myself, as you think about those 9-week changes in the negotiation that has to go on between campuses, and a lot of conflict resolution every single day brings a new element to conflict resolution, and they spend a ton of time in that as well. And so those are just ongoing items that you see there that their days are full of. We've broken up the presentation amongst all of them according course, as you know, Ms. Litchfield's not able to be with us this evening, but I promise you we'll do a good job and do her proud as we talk through her pieces of the presentation too. And so with that being said, I'm going to turn it over first to Ms. Godby.
Okay, first I'm going to talk to you a little bit about principal meetings that started last year. We were having meetings, but not quite as often as we were last year at the end of the 9 weeks. So when the last 9 weeks of last year happened, we started having Tuesday meetings with our principals every week. And we learned that they really needed us for that guidance. And as we got better at it every week, at what they needed to get, and we also save all that information so they have one place to find it. It's in the POP as well as in their PowerPoints to share with their staffs. So now on Tuesdays, we have our Chiefs meeting in the morning. It's a meeting day. And then the afternoon, we have all of our principal meetings. And we have different time slots for elementary, middle, and high so that people who need to talk, like special education or HR, can speak with all 3 groups and be present in the WebEx for right now, but usually in person. So on Tuesday meetings, they allow for us to have cross-campus collaboration. The teachers and principals can talk to each other because of the information that we're sharing with them. Consistent messages for K-12 that used to come monthly are now coming weekly. A common presentation across all the levels, and then they're catered a little bit towards each level at the end. So we have the basic same information for all campuses, elementary, middle, and high, and then things that are relevant to each of those things also. So we cover both. All district departments have access to the principals every week if necessary. The format is more proactive than reactive because of the crisis management that is so important right now in the situation we're dealing with. But we've learned a lot, and some of it will continue. Some of the things happening on campuses will also continue. These weekly meetings have increased collaboration and problem solving among principals, and that they continue after the meeting is over. They have their little groups that they talk to each other. They go back and look at the chat. They discuss things that maybe they didn't understand and didn't ask, and so they discuss amongst themselves. So they continue to learn from each other even after our meetings are over. We're hearing some really positive things about that. And alignment conversations between feeders and whole groups. That was probably the most powerful thing that I saw last 9 weeks of last year was within a feeder pattern, all of the elementary campuses talked to each other to see what they were doing for 5th grade graduation and all of those things that come at the end of the year, so one campus isn't left out not quite doing as much as someone else. So now they're continuing to do that just on their own, so it's pretty powerful. So now we have a couple of pictures. Our little twins, I had to put those up there from Vickery. These are some pictures right the first day of school from when they first came back, different elementaries. Andy's going to speak to you next about parent orientations.
All right. Every year we talk to the principals about the importance of just first impressions, when they have new families or new students come to their school. But this year we felt like it was even more important to really make great first impressions on the families and really communicate clearly and effectively from the very beginning and really constantly. So at our Tuesday meetings, the principals all discussed and shared different ideas on what would be the best way to communicate with parents at the beginning of the year. Because remember, we had several different things going on, the pathway forms, everyone was worried about PPE and everything else. We wanted to really get out a good, consistent message, and we wanted it really similar between the schools. So we talked a lot in our meetings about what would be the most effective way to do that. We held parent meetings virtually. We were very pleasantly surprised at how high the participation was for our Title I schools. I mean, it was much higher than the normal in-person meetings, and that's something we've talked all along about the things that we've learned this year that we're going to continue on next year, and that's definitely one of them. We also, along that same lines, were our ARDs that were online or on WebEx, how effective those were. But parents had the ability to ask questions in the chat boxes and post messages, which is not always as easy in person, and we would answer those. The principals would answer those at the end of those meetings. Teachers were able to present videos from their classrooms, chats from their classrooms, communication from their classrooms. We were excited about that. And then the protocols were able to be previewed by the parents. So this was able to give a good, consistent message from the school to all the teachers, all the parents. Next slide. Virtual open house. Our campus has really embraced everything virtual. And, it's amazing how far all of us have come with WebEx and Zoom and everything else virtually. It's just natural, I think, to all of us now. And it's natural for the teachers with the parents. But they use videos in these virtual open houses to introduce the staff, to tour the school. The principal was able to give a video from them to really kind of put a name with a face and put the parents at ease. And then we did lots of live sessions with Q&A campus leaders. This was an example from Harmon this year. They found a new platform and did this book that is it's every teacher in the school has a video and has like a syllabus on this book. So for they're going to be able to use it again in the spring. But it was a virtual open house platform that's really hard to explain. But the links go to every teacher's classroom and every teacher's syllabus. And just very, very informative. We've got a lot of great feedback from the parents about how easy it was to maneuver, and we shared that with all the other principals for their open houses. Now I'm going to hand it off to Leanne.
Actually, Rhonda.
Actually, I'm going to do Lori's part right now, and I'm going to learn that so that I can do our pop. I love that, the way she did that. I think Julie Cardinal did it right. Yes. Okay, so Lori was supposed to present on orange routines this year. She was on the task force for when we began school and what kinds of protocols we were going to have in place. So those are going phenomenally well, actually. It's like secondhand right now to walk into a campus and get your temperature taken if you're not from their campus, and it just moves like it has happened all the way. So takeaways for the level orange that we learned, changes that principals are reporting that are working and that they're learning from. Staggered arrival and dismissal between car riders or grade levels. Use doors that they did not previously use for arrival or dismissal. Staggered passing periods. So we're letting kids out at different times. Homeroom arrivals and 4 lunch periods. One-way hallways. My daughter would have something else to say about that. But she laughs about the one-way hallways. Continued emphasis. Our weekly meetings allow principals to continue sharing each week what is working and opportunities to collaborate. And when they do share, if we share something and someone loves it, they call each other after, and you'll see everyone start doing something that they weren't doing before. It's just amazing to watch how fast they learn. So next you're going to see a few pictures. The one on the left, the teacher had made, I think it's Jeeps, out of the little desk shields. So it was really cute. Several of the campuses at Hebron Valley had those. And beside that is a virtual teacher, and you can't tell, but a lot of her students are on the screen. I was trying to make sure I included the virtual teachers in some of the pictures.
That's a virtual teacher. And she's got in person?
No,
different.
No.
Different teachers.
classrooms.
Two different
rooms.
pictures.
Oh, I see.
2 different
But
rooms.
that's awesome. We should have everybody doing stuff like that. I know it's like a competition, but that's really cute.
It is. It was amazing. There were a couple of rooms in that grade level who did it, but that took some time for them to do that.
That's the innovation we should promote and recognize. That's really cool.
On the left, this is another innovation. This is, I forgot what school it is. Etheridge, that's right. The nurse was so creative that this is a walk-up window to drop off medications. They redid the nurse's office. They had been asked to make it more private and in a different place in case they had to put kids in places and you had a number of kids in there. So for parents to walk up and get their child or to drop off medications, very innovative. And then on the right side is a school that is a music class, learning music outside on their little cans. That's my favorite picture. And then there are a few more. This is middle school.
We had a couple of campuses that, a lot of them, probably most of them, have different signs. The Wear a Mask is at Creek Valley, just trying to be creative in how to encourage and just remind students to continue to wear a mask or go up this stairway only and not down. And they've been so creative in how to keep kids going in the same direction to really try to avoid that cross path when they're walking. The next two pictures, one is orchestra practicing. You can see how they're spread out and how they're practicing social distancing. And then the next picture, I believe, is...
Marcus?
Yep.
Marcus.
I'll let you tell specifically.
It's when we were setting up cafeterias, Marcus, of course, had the most kids come back, so we really needed space, and they converted their silver gym into another cafeteria, and were able to move a serving line down to the concession stand, and it's really, really worked out good.
So I'm going to talk about TPAS evaluation with principals. And, we changed to this a few years ago, and compared to the old system, it's a lot more time consuming, but it's very valuable because lots of really good conversations happen with the principals. There is an opportunity for them to really reflect on their personal growth and the work they're doing at the campus. So it's a lot of work for all of us involved, but it's well worth it. The next slide, this slide actually shows the process of what it looks like throughout the year and the monitoring that we do, and so in ways that we support our principals. At the beginning of the year, really depending on whether you're a new principal or if you are a returning principal, determines how that self-assessment is completed. It's better, as a brand new principal, when you come in and do the self-assessment, it's difficult to really score yourself because you really don't know what you don't know. And so they're going to really be on the lower end because they haven't had opportunities to do a lot of the things that leadership role entails with being a principal. So typically you'll see that the final assessment is done, and that's really when it's most valuable at the end of the year. But in our May to August timeline with the principals over the summer, they're really thinking about what it is that they want to focus on for the following year by reflecting on their data that they've received from the STAR scores, as well as just conversations they've had at the end of the year with teachers and any feedback they've gotten back from parents, panorama data, all of that, and really trying to focus, okay, what is where I want to go with my own growth the following year. So that's what they do in May and August, and then we meet in between August and October to have the beginning of year meeting. And we sit down and talk about the DIP, how that aligns with their campus improvement plan, which ultimately will align with their personal growth goals as well, some way intertwined and connected. We'll talk about just new staff, their goals, just beginning of year, how the professional learning went, depending on the timing of when they have that meeting scheduled is where we're talking about the professional learning. Has it already happened, or is it coming up? In October through December, we're back out on campuses really being intentional about walks and having reflection conversations about their goals and trying to center our walks in the areas that they're specifically working on, or of course walking classrooms of teachers that they might be concerned about, and we have those conversations as well. Once we get to December to February, during those, it's about probably 10 weeks or 8 weeks of time that we have to do their middle of year progress meeting. And that's where we bring the goals back up, look at their progress, start to evaluate their artifacts that they are starting to collect, as well as that progress. When we focus on that instructional goal as an instructional leadership, which is standard 1, we really want to make sure they're keeping the data to monitor the progress. So again, we bring up a lot of those conversations we had regarding the campus improvement plan, just to keep those the center of conversations. Then in the spring, they're collecting their artifacts and continuing to work through their goal as we get to the end of the year meeting, which happens from April to June. This is when they complete the final assessment, which is where they're looking at their own personal growth and specifically the 5 different standards and how they've progressed. Even though it may not have been a goal, it's things they've done and intertwined throughout their years. So that's going to change, which ultimately drives the conversation to develop and start having conversations about an area they want to focus on the following year. We also just look at the campus improvement plan again. Just look at the artifacts and go through all of those and begin to have conversations about staff, hiring, and all of that. So it's an ongoing conversation and great reflection opportunity for both of us in the work that we do together and how we can best support them with everything they're working on. The next piece is our target improvement plans, which I know all of you are familiar with. TEA and the expectations that we are having to support specific campuses, and we serve as the DCSIs, which is the District Coordinator for School Improvement, for the campuses that have been identified for school improvement. And you can see here a list of the campuses. We have Lewisville Elementary, Rockbrook, Central, Stewart's Creek, Durham, Huffines, Hedrick, DeLay, Lakeview, and Lewisville Learning Center. And we do anticipate that these will be brought to the board to you in December this year. We were able to select we had a choice between options of how we were going to work this year because of COVID and just how the year started. So we chose option 2, which allows us the fall to really work with the campuses to drive and get that targeted improvement developed, and then we will bring that to you in December to review like we did last year.
So as you know, as part of the targeted improvement plan, we all had to attend, the DCSIs and the principals had to attend Effective Schools Framework. And part of that, these are the components of that, and it was so powerful that we have begun to bring that back to all of our campuses. We just started last week at our meeting, and we started with level 1 last week. But basically what it is in the outermost, you see the strong school leadership and planning. It's important to think ahead and to plan ahead, and we tell our teachers this all the time, but all of us have to do this. Effective, well-supported teachers, as Dr. Rogers alluded to earlier, the principals need to know how to lead a staff development. They have to be comfortable with it. They're no longer just managers, which is what they were for many, many years, but now they have to understand instruction. High-quality curriculum and positive school culture. I did that backwards. The culture is second, and then high-quality curriculum is third. And all of that together is effective instruction is what we're shooting for. And with the culture, of course, comes the relationship building. If a kid knows that you care and want them to learn, and it's what I say about athletes, they'll run through walls for you, and we're really try to honing in on that all the time about talking to your teachers about the importance of building good relationships with your kids. And the same goes for us with them. But I will tell you, after we started TPAS, I wanted to say this, the principals told us, because LEAD is modeled much like TPAS, and the principals have told us that they are having very powerful conversations with their teachers because of the way it's designed that they didn't have before. And that's how we know it's working, because they are talking about instruction.
And I think just before, what we do as chiefs in our meetings with our principals, we really try to model for them how to, because a lot of what we talk about, they're then going to share with their staff. And so we will model and use different platforms, just really hoping that they will implement at their campus. And that goes with team building, professional learning activities, all of those things. We try to model for them, especially during this pandemic. Things have had to look different. So we've done things differently that has helped them at their campus as well.
And then we wanted to share, aside from all the collaboration and work with the chiefs, which has been a lot, there are other support structures in place to help principals and assistant principals continue to learn. We try to be proactive, and leaders are learners, so those things that Rhonda talked about in the framework of culture and instructional leadership and those kind of things, there's ongoing support year-round to help them grow in those areas, reflect in those areas, the DIP, the district initiatives, all those things. So all administrators participate. Of course, y'all know Thrive. You've been there. Principal U, which has now turned into principal meetings, but we also have learning for Principal U that we do. The structures have changed this year a bit because we've had to adapt, but they happen 2 or 3 times a semester. APs also go through learning, so they have those 3 times a year on intentional topics that we want them to grow in. And then learning leaders is actually all district leaders come for learning for those, which happen a couple times each semester. In addition to that, we have collaborative learning cohorts. So these are cohorts that principals or assistant principals can apply to be a part of, and then they're selected to be in those. So those are voluntary additional learning and great, powerful cohorts that they participate in. And then in addition, new administrators have additional learning and meetings to support them in the new role that they're in. New principals have a 30-day plan, and that continues to come around as they work with their chief and through the learning processes. And then they're mentors for all new administrators as well. So just wanted to make sure that we hit on all the supports that we provide for administrators.
You know, one of the things, and I was thinking this the other day, I mean, it's crazy. I've been in central office now going on 17 years. And to think about what's in this presentation and having served in the curriculum realm, you know, as a math supervisor that long ago, and you never got in front of the principals. I remember it would be a big deal to call Dr. Rogers as the principal of Marcus and just go over and have a meeting about something, much less ever get in front of them in a learning format and talk about curriculum and instruction and the effective schools framework. I mean, those kind of conversations did not happen. And so I just can't help but as I sit here and I listen to reflect on, while 17 years may not seem like a long time, a lot has changed in that amount of time. And so, you know, I'm just so thankful for to look at that slide and all that's on there and to think about what's available to our leaders. We talked a lot at the end just about as we were putting these thoughts together today, and Leanne is the one that actually said this. And we said, we need to put that on the slide. We didn't put her name after it. We should have. We talked about it. But that really, when it comes to supporting principals, I mean, they're making an untrackable number of decisions every single day. And so what they need is they need communication, they need the opportunity to collaborate, and they need people to be available. They need to know when they call, someone's going to answer. When they text, someone's going to answer. They're just facing such daunting demands. You know, I think about what was on that first slide about some people would say the job of a principal is truly impossible, and it might be, and thank God that we have the people we do out there who are willing to tackle an impossible job every day, but thank God that we have people that are willing to stand in the fire with them in making calls that there's no right or wrong answer. There's got to be an answer. There's just about 1,000 different ways you can go about it. So thank you all so much for being part of this, putting this together, and we just appreciate that. And so we'll take any questions at this time that you all have.
Thank you all for that presentation. Let's start with Ms. Cox for questions.
We just doing one question? Or?
Yeah, let's do one question, and then we'll come back around and you can finish up.
Can I have yours? Okay, so I guess I'm going to ask a comment and then a question. Is that okay, Ms. Sells?
Sure.
So I didn't hear the Career Center or teams. Who manages those principals? That would be you, Mr. Plummer.
Yes.
Okay.
I was actually did Mr. Gilbreth's TPS goal setting this morning, and constant communication with them and constant communication with teams.
Do you have the Learning Center as well?
Dean has
But they're in our meetings with us, so we've grouped them in with this presentation because they're a part of every meeting with us.
So my question is, first of all, thank you for the work that you do. I know this is a trying year for everybody, and you guys are, in the fire, as Dr. Rapp stated, so I appreciate all your work that you're doing. But the groups, I love that the groups are meeting the principals, but what are we doing individually? Because I've heard that comment from principals way before COVID, of course, but commenting to me going, I want to develop as a principal. I want to be a good principal. How do I enrich myself? And you're not going to share that in a group. You need that one-on-one coaching of here's how to be an effective leader on your campus. And it's concerning to me because we have a lot of new principals. How are we developing them to be rock stars on their campus? I mean, just a quick comment. I did a closing right before I came here, and I'm going to give a shout out to him because she doesn't even know I'm on the school board. And she just said, the reason we picked this house is because of Mr. Greenwell. She goes, I brought a little something for the PTA just to thank him. And do you know, he wrote a personal note to me and ran out to my car and thanked me in the line while I was going. She goes, he didn't even do that. It wasn't even a big deal. But it's things like that while people want to move here and go to our campuses is for, rock star principals like Mr. Greenwell. So anyway, that's my question about personal leadership development with our principals one-on-one.
I'll take that one. Even before COVID, during our monthly principal meetings, we walk other campuses. And what we always tell the principals is, we're not trying to clone you and have you do exactly the same thing at each school, that different things work at different places. But we want to be able to give you enough ideas that you pick the ones that work for you. So we do that when we walk the classes. We have teachers present. We have department heads present to all the principals, just all the kind of behind-the-scenes things that you wouldn't see. And then everything from book studies to just articles and videos, just sharing what great principals do so that they can pick what's going to make them even better and help them grow. And then the coaching is just daily. It's, every day. I think we're on the phone with several looking for ways, just that continuous improvement model. What do they need to do and how do they need to do it?
And go ahead.
I'll add, Shauna's department meets with the principals about where they are in their PLCs, and then we get that feedback. So I might recommend certain principals attend training based on what I'm hearing back from them that they may or may not have or somebody needs to accelerate and he goes to the next level of PLC training. So we're constantly looking to grow them. It's fun, actually. Then they start asking us. Once they start learning, they start asking.
And it's tied a lot to the TPES, which is the time we spend. I mean, our meetings are often 3 hours. And so we sit there and that document encompasses everything that a good, quality, successful principal would strive to be at this point. And so just because they may not have a specific goal centered around one, because we can't have a goal everywhere, we would never get, but we do identify areas maybe that we feel they need to grow in, but also areas that they want to grow. And that's part of our conversation, regardless of whether it's specifically a goal or not.
Ms. Lasan?
Thanks for the presentation. I think y'all are such a fun team, and y'all are doing great things. So thank you for that. I do really love the idea of the weekly meetings that have come about with COVID. I was just, for one thing, I guess as a board member too, like I was having a conversation with a teacher friend the other day who was going, oh, I hear this campus does this and this campus does that. So I love that they're talking so that at least they should be aware of how one campus is doing something else. So my question is about that. Do you think that this is something that you guys will consider doing after COVID, these weekly meetings? Do you think that's what you would do, or do you think you'd kind of go back to the way you used to do it? Or
I think so. I mean, depending on the time of the year, but definitely I think during transitional times and tough times when things are changing, that the more communication, the better. And it just seems like it changes on basis.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's good to get them all together, and especially as easy as it is now where they don't have to leave campus and do it on WebEx.
Oh, yeah,
Makes it
absolutely.
better.
They might not be as long as they are right now.
Well, sure. Well, yeah. I mean, absolutely. Because I mean, I can definitely see that. But yeah, I do kind of like that idea of the, you know, well, of course you're going to do what you think, but that's a neat idea of doing it weekly.
And ideally, you move towards a more collaborative opportunity where they brainstorm. We can throw topics out there of things that we know many of them are really wanting to work on, and it's just a platform and a space for us to have good conversations together.
Right, right.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we've learned a lot of collaboration tools and ways to be effective in that. So sometimes weekly meetings are daunting, but the collaboration piece, we could use what we learned to continue.
I know sometimes weekly meetings, I mean, you know, work and stuff are not good, but anyway, as long as they're productive.
Well, I have to say this for Litchfield, if she's listening. She has been dying for WebEx to get breakout sessions up and running. So the other day, she tried it out on our office so that we can do what we were talking about with the Lever 1 training from ESF. We're going to be breaking out in feeder patterns so they can talk amongst themselves at the next meeting.
Cool.
Then she has to train me.
Oh, so WebEx has breakout.
It does.
Cool.
Mr. Miller?
Hey, this is all really good. I was just going to maybe add to it just from a timing perspective. As you know, in about a week, we will receive a 55-page document that's an evaluation of us. 17 pages of that is administrative. The rest is about the board, and it's how we're going to function together. But the longer-term play, as you know, when we met with Lori and Mrs. Smith and somebody else last week from Alan, I think, is employee services. And so when you look at, like, what's the future look like? How do we care for our teachers? How do we build succession planning? What do AP pools look like? How do we figure out the best way to hire principals, et cetera? All of that will be in that study, and I think it's important in that process because you'll be inputs into it, that when you find things that work, especially in crisis, that those make it into that assessment in some whatever fashion you think. I mean, I would offer it unrestricted, right? Because the objective here is not to place on you things that have worked well elsewhere, but to join with you on things that have worked elsewhere, and if they can help us. If not, then we just want to bolster what we're already doing. And I think it's a perfect fit and a perfect timing. And you guys are getting to manage in the worst of times, I mean, effectively in our careers. And so, bring all that to the table, and then hopefully next year it just won't be so bad, and that'll just make it look great. So thank you for all this. Keep up the good work.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Ms. Hassett?
I also want to concur. This is a great presentation. I have seen the changes that y'all have gone through. The zone leaders previous was by elementary, secondary, and then to zone leaders. And I had a few conversations about how do we make it more cohesive and allow more collaboration. And y'all have seemed to have done that so well right now. And it's really exciting that more of our campuses get the chance to discuss things not only as their elementary, but as the whole feeder. I'm loving this. Thank you. Do have a question. How are you using the dashboard? How do you use it? Do you use it in the weekly meetings or not yet? Do you just use it with the campuses themselves? How do you use the dashboard to help?
I'll be honest, I haven't used it yet this year. But a lot of it last year for me was used with discipline data, was a lot of the conversations we were having in middle school. But I see that coming down the road here pretty soon once we start collecting some information for this current year.
Okay, good. Discipline was my second question. So.
Well, at Rockbrook, we looked up the ELL and the percentage of low socio because I wanted to see what category he was in. It went up a little bit, so that might help us some. So that's one of the ways that we've looked at it this year so far.
And we are mainly using it for discipline right now because we didn't have that spring data last spring, but we're excited to start.
Is it helping to provide a different set of data rather than just STAR to help more rich conversations?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
we'll ask you guys all that in a separate venue, because I'm not sure.
I do think they see Edugence as more user-friendly
Yeah.
than what we had with Aware, for sure, in terms of being able to click through and.
It's all in one spot.
Ms. Prosnick?
So mine is also around data and goals. And that is, could you give us some goals that you give your principals that is around, that is data proved or data not proved, so to speak? Like, what are you using, what data are you using for the goals? and
Sure.
everything else?
I met with one of the high school principals actually this afternoon, and we were looking at failure rate comparison between the in-person students and the virtual students and kind of what was going on there. And we noticed that the in-person students who were failing had a lot of missing assignments that first 3 weeks of school when they were remote and never made it up when they came back. So we're working through that. And then there were big patterns in the virtual students, just gaps where they wouldn't do work at a time. And as you know, next Friday is the end of the 9 weeks, so we have a big push right now between all of them to contact the students, contact the parents, and we made some changes to Edgenuity that's going to open it up for them to do makeup work. But it's great just to look at the different trends and patterns and try to get the kids caught up, for sure.
So is that a goal for a principal?
Passing rate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the passing rate would be a goal for a principal
Yes.
from a previous year to
That's actually one of his goals today, yes.
Okay, you go ahead. I
I'm
was
sorry,
good.
she was looking at me, but I was thinking, actually. Last week, I was working with one of my veteran principals. She was setting her goals, and I challenged her to change it because she had written something like she wanted all of her students, or 80% or 90% of her students to be in Tier 1 in iStation. Literacy we're concerned about because of the last 9 weeks of last year and then remote and at COVID, the whole COVID thing. And so I challenged her to change it because Tier 1 ranges from 40 percentiles to 42nd percentile all the way up to 100. That's a huge range. And so a student scoring in the 42nd percentile may be in Tier 1, but they still may not get advanced on STAR because of that. So I challenged her to change it to 80% of her students are at the 80 percentile or better, which is going to be a challenge. And she's doing it because that school can do it. But I wanted her first to see that just being in Tier 1 is not the answer. They have to be in the higher level of Tier 1. So it'll be interesting to see how it goes.
And I had a similar conversation with one of my principals last week about virtual, so I'm not going to talk about that, but we were looking at similar data. But I had another principal really focusing on, and it's hard when you're looking at reading progress, especially when we don't have the STAR data, because they always want to go straight to the STAR and make that be the measurement piece. But we have to be creative because we don't want that to be the only way to measure progress. So as I was talking with Mr. Holt actually today, and we were talking about sixth grade and identifying how to measure growth as far as with reading levels and showing at least a year's worth of progress. So he's going to use data from iStation, StudySync screeners, as well as an interim assessment that he's giving and monitoring grade reports for each grading period to see how they're progressing. So there's lots of different areas that he'll be monitoring progress and having conversations with teachers throughout the year.
It gives me a great deal of pleasure to hear that we're not using STAR as one of our measuring. That was the back end part of my question. That we're definitely looking at other measurements and other ways to make sure that our students are learning and growing.
And my question is for the training.
Okay.
Yeah, Ms. Miller. Because when you read leadership cohorts, leadership matters, can you explain, and then collaborative leadership network, are those all standalone programs? And can you give us just a brief, what's the difference and how are those participants chosen? Is it needs based on their goals? Is it And who makes that decision?
So they're all a little different. The Collaborative Leadership Network is for principals, so current principals, and they were veterans. There's a institute in Austin that they put on that's a principal network, and so our principals have gone to that over the past couple of years, and so those that came back said, we want to continue this kind of collaboration. So Adrian Gall and Litchfield and I got together, and we actually worked with TASA on brainstorming on what that looks like. And so there is criteria that we had, and we actually had a rubric that we scored them, because you want the right mindset of person. It's very much proactive problem solving, collaborating to help, be innovative, that kind of thing. So there's a rubric we scored, and it was us three looked at them and did that. And then anyone that we had questions on, actually, some of them actually recommended people that will challenge them. They need to be with that group of people. So that's for that one. The leadership cohorts, there's a teacher group, and then there's administrator. Ms. Prosnick participated in that. So those are APs, voluntary, and they have to apply, and they do action research, so they have to commit to that. But other than that, they're able to participate in it. There's no one that's denied it unless they don't want to participate in the action research. And then Leadership Matters is an AP group that I think we shared this with you maybe last year, but that's a group that we really want to look. It's different learning. It's how to prepare for principalship, and so they apply for that. And then the chiefs and I and Dr. Rapp all look at those to pick who participates.
Okay, thank you. That was reading that, it just triggered just more questions. Just wanted to know the differences of that. Ms. Cox, do you have more questions? Go ahead.
One more question. So I'm not trying to diss y'all by any means. I think y'all are fantastic, but we can all be better, right? I mean, we can all do better at our job. So who actually trains you? How do you get your coaching and your new skill sets to, not everybody's the same, so we have to find new tactics and new ways to train people, motivate people. We can't keep doing the same thing, or you're going to keep getting the same results. So how do you get your training and your continued education on motivation and being an effective coach yourself?
Guess we'll go down the line. I think a lot of it comes from our meetings with Dr. Rapp on Tuesday mornings, because we collaborate.
It's all on you, Dr. Rapp.
We all kind of collaborate together on what direction, and we all talk through, all the different scenarios. And then, of course, we're constantly reading and researching the latest trends in education. But I think us, and then coming out of the leadership team meetings with Dr. Rogers on Monday mornings, we just all collaborate together and just really push each other, I think.
I'm an avid reader, so I'm constantly reading. I usually read a book for pleasure and then a book for professional, and I just alternate throughout the year. So I get some ideas from that, and educational journals that come in that we order. So, and Dr. Rapp may suggest some things, but it's just mostly from my reading is where I get motivated to want to share with the principals.
All of that, plus attendance at TASA or different professional learnings outside of our campus. And really probably some of the most valuable learning we have is networking with other districts. I mean, we know people in other areas that when we're facing something, we're going to find out and see if what they're doing is great, if it's working, or if we need to stay away from it. And so those are all pieces.
And I can speak for Litchfield that we're, along with Dr. Fitzhugh, we're participating in an executive leadership institute out of Austin.
Good to hear. It's good to hear. Ms. Lasan, anything else?
I just had one more little thing you said each new principal gets a mentor. Who are those mentors? Are they retired? Who are they?
Yes, they are retired
Okay.
principals.
They're retired principals. Did we have enough? I mean, because we had a lot of principals, right?
Yes, we had enough. They have a couple each, well, more than a couple each. But yes.
Oh, each principal has more than
Each retired principal has that, yeah, because that's their job.
one. Okay.
Is them.
And,
yeah.
and
We-
let's be clear, not every retired principal
No,
would be a mentor.
Gotcha. Do we pay them to do that?
We do.
We do? Okay.
That looks a little bit different right now because of COVID.
Yeah, it's a little different right now. We've adjusted because they did not have experience in crisis mode of COVID, so we have kind of adjusted. But year 2, it's actually a 2-year program, so year 2 principals are still getting mentored with their ones from last year.
Mr. Miller?
I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Hassett?
I had another question. I haven't looked at TPEST in years. If you can remember, what are the 5 standards? You said there's instructional leadership and then culture. What are the things that you mentor them? Or
gosh, the exact wording.
I can go look it up later. I was just curious.
Well, there's school, you hit 2 of them.
Yeah.
And then there's one with like
Systems.
systems and
Resource stewardship.
What does he mean by
resource
systems?
stewardship and communication. That's the other one.
And
What is
most
systems?
recently, they've added socio-emotional in there in 2 different areas. So for the first time, we saw that when it came about.
For students or for the teachers? I mean, the social emotional, so
It's just the leadership and how to navigate that
both
as a
levels.
leader. Yeah.
For the principals, it's how are you ensuring this for your teachers and your students? And that wasn't in there before. So that's a big difference. So we get Manya in front of them all the time. Dr. Rogers and Lori do too. And we are learning. When I went to the last meeting, I did the TBRI training and came out and I said, we need to be doing that. It was so awesome. And
What
they
is that?
actually-
What is TBR?
Trauma-based
It's
What?
how to-
instruction, trauma-based.
Yeah, it's trust-based. And they give you simple little exercises when a child is having a meltdown on how to switch to the frontal lobe, so it immediately stops it. And it was just amazing.
Can
So
you
I came back
share
and
that?
talked
Yeah, you want to share a tip or two?
I learned about it about 20 years too late, I think, for my youngest.
I still have one.
Thank you.
Ms. Prosnick?
How long are these meetings on Tuesdays? I know you said you wanted them short, but currently, like, how long are they right now?
Right now.
Right now.
Right. Hour and a half to 2 hours, probably.
Okay. And when you say shorten them, what do you think it could be shortened to?
Well, elementary's gone 3 hours a couple of times.
She said right now. I can, this week.
Yeah. So, like, I understand, like, certainly in the beginning, they were probably, because their list of questions was
Massive.
probably thicker than
Yes.
the survey, the full survey printout. So, so they're an hour and a half right now. My question, you said you expected them to get shorter, hopefully as we move out of
I
late
don't think they
pandemic.
would get much short, maybe an hour to hour and a half.
But
And-
definitely not all afternoon.
Not all afternoon. We've had some go till 6:30 and 7 at night, so.
So I love the collaboration that comes from it. I'm going to be kind of blunt here. I love the collaboration. I don't want a principal off the campus for 2 hours with travel time every week, standard. I like the idea that can be done through WebEx. It doesn't mean I never want them to come here, but I do think taking a principal off of campus is, because that's where I want them to be.
I think that would be more our once a month,
Once a
because
month.
when we have that once a month meeting, we won't have the principal meeting
Okay.
as well.
So it's
It will
just
be
3, so then it would be 3 weeks
Yes,
of the ones, and then the one time here.
yes.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a positive that WebEx
Yeah.
or some system like that provides, you know. I mean, we were talking about that this morning, leadership team, you know, we used to call in 68 campus reps for the superintendent teacher council. Well, now we can do that via WebEx, you know, and let them not have to drive all the way from the far east side you know, so there's a lot.
127 square miles of fun and
Yeah,
frivolity.
yeah.
Well, and one of my principals missed the meeting last week because she was in a restraint with a student. And I WebExed her afterwards and filled her in on everything face-to-face, but
Yeah.
it was on WebEx.
Technology can be good.
Anything else from anybody? And mine was along those lines, is I think that through this all, I have that same concern with just the travel time and some people being late, and I would love for that to continue, but continue as a hybrid of in-person and WebExing. I'm is focusing on some soft skills for our campus leaders. I think that back in my day, you didn't hardly say hi to your principal. I mean, I knew him, but boy, it was not, it was a different time. And I'm glad now that, and I think that for our principals, I think learning that communication, learning that leadership, and seeing that focus, I think then it also reflects on the students. And the students see those relationships. Our kids are smart. Sometimes I think they're smarter than us. And I've said it before, and I think it's the same for our leadership as well as our students. I think we're going to come out of this time with more character, more competent, and more confident. And I'm glad to see that this has been a time of really pushing through and doing some good things and some great things. And I'm glad to hear this report tonight. It's been enlightening. So thank you all.
Thank you all very
We
much.
miss you, Ms. Litchfield.
And please
Wherever
watch
you
your
are.
microphone.
Yes. So I don't get nervous and I'm making hand gestures over here to these two. Go do it. Yes.
I don't need to crawl under the table.
That'd be funny.
Okay.
And still Dr. Rapp. Yes, so our next topic is just to share information with you tonight about our virtual survey results and our learning commitment data. And of course, you not only have this presentation in your packet, but I'll share a link with you tomorrow to a way to view the results electronically. I did bring one printed out copy of each of them if somebody wanted to take them with them tonight as well. Just trying to be a full service shop. Okay, so the first thing that we'd like to just touch on are what did the learning commitment results look like as the deadline for parents to complete that was on Friday. And so you can see that for elementary, that's what this chart is. Oh, and I forgot to say thank you to Communications for helping put this all together, and Dr. Fitzhugh, because all of this does not happen without those two people. Okay, so the first slide is elementary, and so you can see that our first 9-week in-person percentage was 59%, and for the second 9 weeks, that's gone up to 69% of our students coming in person. For virtual, we had 41% of our elementary students virtual the first 9 weeks, and of course that's going to go down to 31%. At secondary, the changes are a little smaller. The percentage of students coming in person was 53% the first 9 weeks. That's bumping up to 59% for the second 9 weeks. And then you can see the slight bumps down, of course, in the number of students that are going virtual to 26% and the number of students going virtual plus to 15%. Those numbers are not representative of the fact that, of course, while the numbers of students attending the virtual pathway is going down, you do have some students still who are choosing to go from in-person to virtual, virtual to in-person, but the net effect is that there's more returning to in-person than staying virtual. So some brief background about the survey that we launched. Basically, it was released September 16th. It closed on September 25th. We provided the survey to families and teachers who were in the virtual learning pathway. There were 11,356 responses to the family survey, which is a really great turnout that represented 52% of the virtual enrollment. Parents and guardians were asked to complete a separate survey for each child they had enrolled, and there were 940 responses to the teacher survey. So we're going to take a look at the teacher survey first. One of the first questions we wanted to talk about was, has the experience with virtual learning been easy the entire time, gotten easier? Are you neutral? Has it been difficult? Has it gotten more difficult? And you can see that for the most part, it has gotten easier for teachers the last few weeks. There's no doubt that as I was continuing to read through survey responses, the sheer number and volume of opinions all over the map is just something that is the theme of COVID. For every one teacher who reported it's been easy from the start, to a teacher who says it's gotten easier and I'm finding a groove. Of course, we still have teachers who are sharing that this is still difficult. And as Dr. Rogers spoke to last week, when you take a big, large portion of your workforce and completely change the way they do their jobs. And one of the things that I thought about even today, you think about something like Canvas, and we had the opportunity with y'all's support to build a plan about how do you implement that. And I think we're kind of spoiled to the fact that we get to build a plan and work towards it. Because what we didn't get to do is have that lead time. We got the chance to build a plan. We didn't have the chance to have as much lead time as what we've gotten accustomed to. And that can be quite shocking to the system.
And you have to remember there's, I think, about 1,000 of our teachers that are virtual teachers, if I'm not mistaken. Many of those teachers didn't choose to teach virtual. Right. I mean, we needed them to teach virtual, and so, some of them are not in the space that they really would prefer to be in.
And then the next question that we wanted to highlight this evening, the teachers answered, what have been the top 3 areas of concern or challenge for you thus far? Across the board, all levels, teachers are sharing getting students to complete assignments, which that's no different than probably what an in-person teacher would tell you, to be honest. Getting students to turn in their work. Helping students and parents troubleshoot technical problems. That's not surprising, really, given that the platform and so many changes and things being different, but that was a source of frustration to teachers. They're not used to being in a troubleshooting technical role like that. Taking attendance at middle school and high school rose to the top. For elementary, adapting the curriculum. As we've talked about, there's no doubt that teaching virtual kindergarten students is a new frontier. I've said that word numerous times. So teachers at elementary saying adapting curriculum is not surprising. Grading assignments for a larger number of students, and then, of course, learning a new program. So then we asked the teachers, in relation to the district curriculum and the TEKS, we asked them some specific questions if they had been using the Edgenuity platform. And elementary, the larger number of responses said it's about right in terms of rigor. Middle school, they shared they thought it was a little too rigorous. And then high school was about right in terms of rigor. And of course, everybody's definition of rigor is a little bit different too. We understand that as well. But it does give us a little pulse of what their thoughts are there. And then we asked them, for students who are struggling, what are the top 3 reasons they think students are struggling in the virtual pathway? The top answer across all was lack of ability to be self-directed. That when you're learning virtually, that you have a lot of independent time, and that students are struggling with that. And how do they manage their work and all the things they have going on? Lack of parent support at home was number 2 across all levels. And, that can be something you hear from in-person teachers as well. Sometimes I have to remind myself, what are the struggles that we would hear if we were asking an in-person teacher these things also? Organizational issues, I'm not for sure at middle school that would surprise that that's one of the top, because we talked about study skills last spring being needed for middle school, and this was before a virtual learning pathway existed. Edgenuity functionality, and then online learning capabilities were other reasons that students struggled. So those are some highlights from the teacher survey, and of course you'll have the opportunity to look at all the other questions as well after today. Then the virtual family survey, so again we had a good number of respondents. We had a good distribution between elementary, middle, and high, and a pretty good breakdown between the different grade levels. At elementary, our smallest response came from our pre-K families. But I think when it comes to surveys, that's a pretty good broad representation of the different types of grade levels that are out there. And you can see the difference between virtual only and virtual plus. So how would families describe their overall satisfaction? And of course, I've been sharing this question with you all as well in some weekly updates. At elementary, the largest number said satisfied, and then a significant number said neutral, of course. So it's interesting. We've talked about the fact that many families, in regards to this question, chose neutral. Maybe they're just not ready to land the plane on am I satisfied or not. So a neutral is an interesting response. At middle school, your largest number actually selected neutral. And then, of course, you have your percentages there on either side of that between satisfied and dissatisfied. And then at high school, your largest number answered satisfied, and then second was neutral. And then, of course, you can see if you've got either ends of the spectrum on extremely satisfied to extremely dissatisfied. And so I don't think when you look at those responses, it's really any different than what you would expect. People are all over the continuum with their opinions. And so for some people, the approach is working. For some people, they may just not be for sure. And for some people, obviously, they're not as happy. And the not happy ones are the ones that we all tend to hear the most from as well. So has the experience with virtual learning, we asked the parents the same question we asked the teachers. The majority of respondents did say it has gotten easier throughout the last few weeks. And then you can see there the breakdown between the different levels by far. Middle school is an area where Ms. Lewis and I have been really talking about this results. We talked about them with middle school principals last week in terms of looking at that feedback and finding ways to improve based on what we were hearing. In general, do you find that your child needs the following to be successful? So we asked the parents, of course, there was a lot of options there, but overall, across the board, they all say they need a relationship with a teacher. And I think that that only affirms what we already know about what makes this business so special is our teachers. And then the second thing they said was structure, which is a little challenging for that to be the number two thing that you need in a virtual learning environment, because that's not a typical element of a virtual learning environment. Virtual learning, historically, a hallmark of it has been flexibility and the ability to have it meet your schedule in a variety of ways. So the fact that the majority of families are saying their child needs structure kind of doesn't completely align with the virtual learning aspect. Then they said they need a defined schedule next. And then elementary, their next choice was interaction with peers and collaboration versus middle school and high school is accountability. I don't think any of those answers would surprise any of us, especially as many of us have raised children at those different levels. And then we asked, have you experienced any difficulties with virtual learning? And of course, we know that yes, the majority have. So the interesting part about the answer to this is yes, the majority have experienced difficulties with virtual learning. However, they also answered that it has gotten easier. So I thought it was important to put this question that while many of them experience difficulties, they're saying it is getting easier, many of them, or providing different ways in the open-ended responses to give us feedback to improve. And then because they have experienced difficulties, we asked them to give us what were their top 3 areas of concern. Edgenuity was the top one across all the levels, and of course learning a different platform, that's not surprising that that would be one of the top things. Workload was the second concern. Amount of time with the teacher was the third at all levels, and then after that you see submitting assignments in elementary, the pacing of the content at all levels, and communication at middle school and high school. Then we asked families, is the content provided for your student, just how would they feel, too easy or too hard? The largest number of responses here were neutral for all 3 categories, elementary, middle, and high. Each day we asked them to give us a sense of how long is their child spending on work when you think about the length of the school day. Elementary and high school are living in the land of about 4 to 6 hours. And then middle school about 6 to 8. So there are some responses with 8 to 10 or 10 or more, but that's about the time frame that we would have been shooting for when thinking about what work should take, how long the work should take you. When you enrolled your child for virtual learning, what was the expectation that best describes what they thought they were going to be signing up for? And the majority of them, as you can tell, all thought it would be a fixed schedule aligned with school day hours with teachers leading live lessons daily. And then we asked them about the amount of work for their student. As you can see, middle school, the majority of answers came in with too much, but elementary and high school came in saying it was about right. The pacing of the assignments, that's an interesting one, that while the work they're saying might be too much, the pacing's just right. Those things don't quite go hand in hand together from a curriculum perspective, but that is how they're answering that. So, does your child learn the content from the materials in each lesson? And overwhelmingly, at all 3 levels, they all say that they are learning the content. I think that that's a huge takeaway. We may all disagree about how it should be carried out, and it may not be exactly in the same way that it would have been in person, but overwhelmingly, they feel like their kids are learning. In your opinion, is the amount of synchronous live teaching time your child experiences again? Elementary and high school was just right. Middle school was too, I think those are switched. I think the too little should be the top and the too much should be the end. Because middle school came in higher with it should be too little. And then how does your child interact with their teachers? Overwhelmingly, the format that they say they interact with them in is in the whole class format. This one we thought was very interesting is the communication you receive from your child's teacher. Look at that elementary percentage, just right, 82%. So, there were some huge number of kudos to teachers in those open-ended responses. And so some teachers will really get some nice feedback as their principals read through those. And then still the largest percentage, even at middle and high school, which is a hard target to hit, especially at high school as parents are having many different things going on, right? But still just right communication. And then their virtual administrators or their campus administration, the largest percentage of answers came in at just right as well. And then finally, we're getting close to the end, I promise. Are you able to monitor the progress and work completion of your student? Overwhelmingly at elementary, they said yes, easily. At middle school, that percentage goes down. The largest percentage is still yes, easily, but it's not quite as high. And then same thing at high school. Of course, not surprising that high school, the next largest number of responses are the child works independently compared to middle and elementary. And then we asked, would you be interested in attending training sessions in person? Because out of some of the concerns, we've just thought maybe if we got them here to provide some more training, that would be helpful. But overwhelmingly, that was not something that people are desiring. About a third across the board say yes, and everybody else says no. So that's that. So our next steps, one of the things that we're working on is providing secondary teachers increased customization capability with Edgenuity. Mr. Plunkett alluded to that earlier. That's part of our Tuesday meeting time with the principals tomorrow, is the secondary teachers will have their own Edgenuity course, and that will allow them to customize it at the course level instead of what they're having to do right now, which is customizations per kid. And that's something that the teachers have asked for overwhelmingly, is increased control over that experience. So we're working to provide that for them. We are working, Ms. Lewis is, with the middle school principals about revisiting the middle school master schedule and doing our very best to increase the amount of time that our middle school teachers are seeing middle school students. Many of the middle schools are doing a complete rework so that the kids maybe could follow their Skyward schedule. So they're working on that right now. Time requirements at elementary, we are bumping up the time requirements that teachers should be spending with students in live sessions. Now that we're over the majority of the initial learning curve with the system, we do believe that we can make that move. We are revisiting attendance taking procedures for secondary teachers. Dr. Fitzhugh came in about that today. And we'll be providing the link to the survey documents for you all tomorrow. And then we provided the campus survey results to our campus principals so they could start reading through them as well.
So I just wanted to jump in. First off, I greatly appreciate the work Dr. Rapp, Dr. Fitzhugh, and communications Amanda and folks did to put this together. You know, when we first started talking about it, it was like, okay, be careful what you ask for. You know, but we still felt like it was important to ask these questions, to see where we were at, to see where we could improve. And to be honest with you, some of the data was a nice surprise, I think. It turned out better than I thought. It doesn't mean that there's still not room for improvement, but, it's not quite like some of the emails that we get that everyone across the board wants to throw the system and start over. And, we've certainly heard from our colleagues and other school districts too that they're facing, it's funny, you hear, okay, this program's better in this school district than what you're doing, and yet you hear right before the end of the 9 weeks that this school district's planning to scrap their plan. And I mean, that's just where we're at in this COVID time, is that there's no great answer. We're all trying to navigate these difficult waters and try to find what we believe best fits our students and our staff. And so, anyway, I greatly appreciate the insight. We'll continue to work with this data, and we'll probably do it again sometime, in the spring. The other thing I hope you understand is, while she talked about the numbers of students that change from virtual to in-person for elementary, and it's a massive puzzle that Dr. Rapp, the chiefs, and the principals will have to put together before the end of this 9 weeks to decide which teachers need to move from virtual to in-person and how that works. And of course, and then even though it's 6% of students moving in secondaries from virtual, I mean, that's 1,500 kids that our counselors are having to create additional schedules, seeing that if their virtual schedule works in person, and as we've told parents, there's no promise that it will be exact. And so it's just a massive undertaking that it's sort of like the start of school again all over, and yet we're going to get to do that at the end of this 9 weeks, going into the third 9 weeks and the fourth. I mean, it's just a difficult time, and I just couldn't be more proud of the staff as they've handled these issues. So anyway, kudos to all the folks.
Do you want to take questions, Dr. Rapp?
I'd be happy to take questions, and if I don't have the answers, I'll get them back to you.
Okay. We'll start with Ms. Lasan.
I don't have any questions. Thanks for the presentation.
Okay. Mr. Miller?
Great presentation of the results. Question as it relates to, you had a question about would you be willing to come in for a workshop or something like that?
Yes.
And it was about 25 to 28% said no at each level. What about, because I think we still, while we have gone through this hump, primarily because you guys have put some things out to do some fixes, teachers got more proficient, teachers have started to embrace the platform and said, don't take it away from me. They've gotten in a cadence, right? And are making it work with patches and fixes. But what if, I'm thinking in the context of student outcomes, right? So my child is able to accomplish their work. Okay, by some measure that they're using, right? We've yet to see what grades look like. And so a thought would be, of that 30% that aren't, 70% said they wouldn't come in and 30% said they would?
Roughly.
Okay, so 70. That we do some sessions. For example, if you're K through 2 and you have some problems with Ingenuity and you're using an Apple device, you're going to have a Zoom meeting at 7 o'clock to 9:30, join in advance, and we will have an expert on there to ask an expert. And we do that multiple times for that grade level across the district, whatever the logistics are. I just think that we might find in those percentages then, let's just say a group of people are unhappy and it's 25% of the group, just making it up. If that drops to 15, well, that's a big number. And if it drops to 10, it's an even bigger number. And we do parent sessions really, really well. What do we call them?
Parent University.
Parent U.
Yeah, Parent U. Just do some of those.
That's absolutely the plan,
Okay.
Mr. Miller.
Well,
is to use that data to decide, one, is there a need? We know that parents struggle, and we actually thought it'd be a higher number that might want some additional help. But if 1 out of 3 will do it, hey, we'll take one.
It's all about ambassadors.
We'll take 1 out of 3.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Thank you, though. Good.
Well,
good
and on
review
his
of the-
question, can I follow up on that real quick? Was this the way the question was on the survey? Because it appears to me that in attending means that I'm going to have to go somewhere to attend.
Yes.
And I would have said no too, because adding something on top of that. But I think in the virtual realm, that would be very different.
Well, and one of the things we were trying to sort through is we were trying to figure out is some of the struggle that people are having, because so much, everything got launched virtually. Every parent orientation, every parent meeting. So we thought it might be that people are okay with coming in person, that maybe all the launching virtually just didn't meet their needs. And so we were trying to gauge effort of staff. Are we better off to spend our time developing in-person sessions, or to Dr. Rogers' point, do the sessions that we need to provide, do those just need to be more virtual? And so the data kind of helps us know how to direct our efforts.
And that was just follow up to him. Ms. Hassett?
Yes, I had a question on page 5 with the teacher survey and in relation to the TEKS. And middle schools showed 57% too rigorous. I'm wondering, what are you doing to address the concerns at all the levels, but especially since middle school was higher?
Yeah. So we think one of the things in terms of providing that course customization aspect to teachers regarding to meet the needs of their students, that would help the teachers be able to say, my class isn't ready for this. Some of that also gets to a pacing perspective as well, that if it was moving so faster than what the in-person classroom might have moved for that child. You see in the teacher responses the same struggle they have that we all have. They see students who are thriving and could have probably, would probably learn in this way for the rest of their educational career if we let them. And then they see students who are struggling, and they're at that crossroads too of, I understand that for every move I make here, I have other kids that it doesn't benefit. And that, of course, is our constant struggle. So I think the customization at middle school is going to help a lot. I think helping the teachers understand that all those district-adopted resources that you use all the time anyway, you can still use those. You can use your Study Sync resources. You can use your Gizmos for science. You can use your Pearson for math. And if you feel like there's content in there that is better, then you can supplement with that. And so that's what we're hoping will help. The teachers gave some really great feedback, and we appreciate it. We know it's been a struggle
How
for
are you
them.
forcing that down to the teachers so that they get that information, that they can start using those resources?
So that's part of our Tuesday weekly principal meeting, with the principals. And so Ms. Lewis and Mr. Plunkett having Karen Seeley come and talk to the principals, and that messaging and how we need them to share, then turn around and share that with their teachers.
Ms. Prosnick?
My favorite page is page 12 because it shows that you cannot communicate too much with parents. And I think that's a lesson that we need to take, that information is key. It was certainly the power tool in starting back up to school and going forward. And so I guess I would just really like to highlight that you really cannot over-communicate. And I would emphasize that to our principals and to our teachers and to central administration. You cannot over communicate when all a parent wants is some information. And I will also tell you as a board member, it's very powerful to say just to go to our website, find it on the website, and put the link. I know there's a lot of information here, but here's the direct link to what you're looking for. So I think that kudos to our communications department for putting the communications out there, and to our teachers for keeping those relationships. I mean, that's how you maintain your relationships.
And I think, Ms. Prosnick, we did take a concerted effort that most of the communication, not all, would come through the principal. Because we felt like people pay attention to that more than, that doesn't mean that they don't need to hear district communication. They certainly do, but we felt like it needed to be more, most of it needed to be campus driven.
I agree.
And so I appreciate the kudos for communications because they worked very hard.
Ms. Cox?
Yeah, this is a great tool. My question is it seems like, I wanted to know if there was a place for them to put comments on the sheet. So I see the next steps up here, but it seems to be middle school is the common denominator for the struggling and the frustration, the dissatisfaction. So what are we doing specifically in middle school? I mean, I see the things up there, but obviously there's more to it that we need to seem to work on in middle school.
Sure. So, yes, there was open-ended comment boxes, and we got a lot of them. And so, we are doing our very best we're trying to read through them as well. And I just want to say thank you to the parents who took the time to write all those open-ended responses. I know they may think, is anybody going to read this? Yes. We are reading them and taking them all to heart. So thank you for asking that question too. Ms. Lewis may want to add to my middle school answer. I can't quite tell looking at her back there. But one of the biggest changes truly is revisiting that middle school master schedule. The concern about not having enough time with the teacher and not frequently enough, not getting enough support directly enough. I mean, I would say that's the majority of the comments we have read has been about the master schedule.
And many campuses, I mean, they all have the goal of trying to go to an aligned schedule, but it's not working out as beautifully as they had hoped with conflicts. So there are some that are doing some creative things with co-seating, going to try some of that, as well as developing a schedule, and some are just going to work to continue to make smaller groups that could not make the master schedule align perfectly, just due to, some had too many returning back, so they had very few teachers in virtual, and some are still at the opposite direction, not quite that much more in virtual, but it's with all the conflicts, it makes it difficult to build a master schedule, and some can make it work, and some, they spend a lot of time looking. Because they know that's what's ideally best for kids, so if they can do it, they're trying to do it.
Right. Yeah. And then the course customizations would be the second big thing, really letting the teachers have control of customizing that course more. So we're trying.
And we also had some changes with some attendance for teachers to help to simplify those with a report, as well as some TEA flexibility that we've been given, and so to give a little bit of relief for that as well.
Thank you.
Okay. And my question is, when will the board receive an update from staff on what these percentage changes will mean? This is good to see these percentage changes as far as the virtual learning commitments. But I think for us as board members, it's important for us to know how that's going to impact our campuses. And so maybe you won't be able to answer when you could give us that update, but we would appreciate an update as soon as you can give that to us.
Okay.
Ms. Sells, you're talking about like per campus?
Like
Well,
staffing-wise?
Yes, yeah, staffing-wise.
We, two things,
Thank you.
Ms. Sells. One, as far as our monthly COVID update that I provide, we'll give some examples, but we'll give some more, as far as, not go through every campus, but just, hey, here's how the pieces of the puzzle work, and try to give some examples of that. We talked about that this morning, but then we can certainly provide more detail just separately to the board.
Yeah. I think the board
It's
would appreciate.
it's a difficult thing. It's very likely we may be moving a few teachers. It's very likely, that, give you an example, if more students out of a virtual class are moving in person, then, we're going to move that virtual teacher to in-person, which means we're going to have to combine some virtual kids with another virtual. It's a complicated puzzle that I appreciate the chiefs and Dr. Rapp working on.
And I do appreciate, and I did receive some thank yous from parents over the weekend that wanted to thank our district in particular for giving them the opportunity to have a say and to having those opportunities to realign their own choices throughout the school year. And so kudos to our district for allowing that to happen, even though I know it would have been easier from the get-go to say, hey, you got to pick one, it's going to be yours all year from a staffing position. And so I just wanted to say thank you for that. The other, do y'all have any other questions?
One more question.
One more question, Ms. Hassett, or did Ms. Lasana and Mr. Miller? No, okay, Ms. Hassett?
Similar to what Mrs. Cox had asked, but how specifically are you going to discuss with parents at middle school in particular the changes that will be coming so that they know, because they're probably a little anxious, and how are we going to let them know?
I mean, I think some of that's going to have to be based on what the master schedule for that campus ends up looking like, since that holds so much of the how it impacts the students. And so some of that will be when Ms. Lewis is working with the principals on, okay, so now you're able to make these changes with your master schedule, or you're able to do this, so how are we going to communicate that out to your families? And, you know, one other benefit of those Tuesday principal meetings, they talk about this in there too, and so what are they, because we can't really have a district communication on this because all their master schedules are going to impact,
Right.
it's just going to look different.
But it will be communicated, and they'll
Yes.
eventually maybe be able to calm down.
And we would like that communication also when it goes out,
That'd be
just so
great.
that we can answer. I think
Yeah,
we're
Ms.
getting,
Brown is usually
we're all
great
getting a
about
lot
that.
of
Okay.
inquiries about that. So when you do that bumping up of time, could you apprise the board? We would
Well,
appreciate
and
it.
we could gather what the different schools have been able to do with their master schedules to
We'll
speak to
probably
your question of
put
impact.
We'll probably provide you a summary, because
Okay.
instead of 15 different,
Yeah.
That would work.
we'll
great.
give you a summary.
Okay.
Are there any other questions? I have one more, and I just couldn't remember on the survey. I think for LISD, one thing that makes us so great is I think that we have a lot of teachers who are overachievers in the classroom. And part of this time, they continue that wanting to achieve so much in their classrooms, but it's taking a toll. Was there any self-emotional questioning on the survey, and as far as making sure that our teachers are aware of where they can go for help, for guidance, for anything like that?
There was not necessarily a question about your emotional state at this time. I totally get what you're asking. There was a lot of, in the open-ended responses, there was a lot of evidence from teachers about the stress that they have felt during this time. They were not afraid to tell that story. That's why we hope providing them to the campus principals is important. But we can definitely also, in our Tuesday principal meetings, be sure that they are reading through those responses with that in mind. And it is very hard. We all, as educators, a lot of us have achiever as our top strength. And that's really good, but it's also really stressful in times like this because your classroom virtually is not going to be the perfect classroom that maybe you had in person. And like I said, I think we've gotten spoiled to lead up time. You know, we have that expectation where I'm going to go to this training, and I'm going to go to this training, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to try these 3 things, and then I'm going to see how those 3 things work, and then I'm going to make adjustments. And you don't get that here. And they are struggling with that, and you do see some of that in their responses.
I just want our teachers and our students to know that we are very aware that this is a stressful time, and we want to make available any help that we can as a district for them. So, okay. Nothing else?
Thank you.
Moving on.
Thanks, Dr. Rapp.
Thank you.
Oh, there's one more.
I think I have one last
Oh,
one.
yeah. No, I'm just talking about thanks for that.
Yes, and I just want to say, you know, the class size waivers is connected to this whole conversation, but thank you all so much for your support. You know, as I read through those surveys and I think about our teachers and our families have really done a great job going through this process together with us, and so thank you. Thank you to them, and thank you to you all for your support throughout this. So the class size waivers, just very briefly, I'd written up for you that at this time we are submitting to you for approval 121 virtual classes that waivers are requested for. These waivers represent only 34% of our virtual classes, which means over 70% of them, roughly, I guess 66 would be the better
Right, 66.
addition there, former math teacher failing in that moment.
Science.
Sorry, I know the science person came through there with the math, but ultimately these waivers represent our attempt to try to staff as many of the virtual classes as possible with home campus teachers. And so we worked extremely hard to do that. That does mean that some classes had some higher class sizes. There were some exceptions where students were mixed across campuses, and I shared that with you in the item, that was bilingual staff and possibly campuses where they had smaller staffs and could not distribute staff across both. This number will only come down as you look at the percentage change between virtual and in-person. This is a larger number than what it will actually end up being truly because of the 9 weeks changes at this time.
Okay, does anyone have any questions? Mr. Miller, we'll start with you.
I do not, other than this needs to be an exception because I remembered we did this 7 years ago and the number was up close to 100, I think.
It was around in the 80s.
That was, that's my point.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not for virtual. We were doing
That's
80, 90
80 something.
for these, and so this is an exception this year, and we've got it down to a very reasonable number. Actually, Dr. Rogers, after you became superintendent, but this, in looking at these numbers, I mean, what can we say? Like, pick it apart, change it? We really don't have any option. Unless you tell us that we do, but I don't.
No, and the good thing is, and first off, that happened because the board supported that, Mr. Miller, but the good thing is, as Dr. Rapp said, there are no waivers that we will request for in-person at this time, and so that's a positive out of this, and we knew going into this with the tool of Edgenuity and so on, and we're not the only one facing this, that you can serve a few more students in a virtual platform, and if we had to choose, that's where we would prefer it be. We prefer none of them.
Sure.
Required it, but
Thank you.
Let me go around. Ms. Hassett?
I can't remember what target improvement campuses are in elementary.
Rockbrook,
Rockbrook and Lewisville.
Those are the only two.
Stewart's Creek.
My question is, can we, while we're readjusting, make sure to try to address any issues with the waivers in our target improvement campuses in particular? So I guess it's oh, sorry.
You're fine.
No questions beside that.
Okay,
Ms. Prosnick?
My question is, and you may not know this right now.
sure.
But how many students in our virtual elementary classes are failing?
I don't. I will need to look that up.
Because I'd be very curious what that percentage is in relation to the class size that they are. I'm not saying it absolutely has a correlation.
Sure.
But I was, in looking at the waivers, most of our waivers are Title I schools. And
There's a higher percentage.
And it's a much higher percentage. So
Yeah.
I will just say that's where my concern lies, kind of along the lines of Ms. Hassett's.
Sure.
I also know that, we're in the staffing tree isn't growing out back.
And the thing,
go ahead.
yeah. Well, the thing I would share is just as you think about the virtual classes being what they are, it also
Right.
keeps it. The trade-off is the in-person. So one's gonna, as one goes up, the other one's gonna go down. So
Right.
that's, at those schools, that's what you have to think about as well. But at the 3-week mark, there was not a significant difference at that
Right.
time.
Yeah.
And so it is time to report back on the 6-week report
Right.
for that.
That's all.
Ms. Scott?
So my question is I'm a little, actually really concerned about seeing these kindergarten teachers with 30 and 31 kids.
34.
Virtually. Yeah, 34.
32.
That's 34 parents to call, 34 parents to manage. Is there some aid? We would have this if they were, in person. Is there someone else on that video that's helping watch those kids to make sure they're engaged? That's a lot of little faces to watch, and and hold accountable and be making calls. I can't imagine the stress the teachers are under.
Yeah. So one of the things that, of course, they don't spend all day long in live teaching time at the elementary level as one of the trade-offs about how their schedule will work in order to try to meet kids' individual needs. There's no doubt that, at Kinder and 1, managing a virtual class is looking a lot different. But, I would say, again, those numbers are coming down more at the elementary level as more students chose in-person to move from virtual. So the virtual class sizes, as we were looking at them today, are coming down significantly. So they don't have they don't necessarily have aides. Of course, our in-person kinder teachers don't have aides as well either. So it's just a matter of...
What does it look like? I'm sorry, I'm throwing in another question. So what about our students that are on college campuses that need their student teaching? Do they have an opportunity, and I don't know if it's allowed, but to do virtual, to be with a virtual teacher?
We do have student teachers present in the district at this time, and they have to meet all the same level orange guidelines as they come into the district to work. I don't know that a large number of those are in our primary grades, but if they do have a student teacher, that can help. But I would say the trade-off is the schedule. So when an in-person teacher's in front of their class all day long, and their phone calling and all of that has to happen after the school day's over, the virtual teachers have a different schedule that's a little more flexible. I hate to use the word a lot, but a little more flexible to allow for that calling and contact to happen during the day.
And Ms. Cox, I think the other thing that I would just add is that, and Ms. Prosnick mentioned the staffing tree, but if you remember, we are currently like 60 short in positions for support staff that we can't find. And it's not just us, it's across the spectrum. And so we could probably post some kinder help, and we probably wouldn't be able to. Right now is just not a good time staffing-wise, to find folks. We are struggling even in areas such as special needs. And we've increased their salaries. It's just folks don't want to do that, take that risk, I think. So it's a tough time, employee services wise.
I don't have...
You don't have a question? Okay, I have
Go ahead.
one question after that. So we have said that we are not going to be doing any waivers for in-person classes for elementary, correct?
Well, for now, if it changes,
Because and I realize that is a capital bolded,
Sure.
but in January, let's pretend everybody comes back. How many class waivers are we looking at?
Yeah.
And I'm not asking you to answer that question, but I do think that is something we should be kind of, because like with these 10% and
Yeah, maybe
I'm
I
wondering
need to
if
be
some
more
of this is going to
specific.
change. These numbers are going to change after
Absolutely.
those choices that were made. And so I'm not saying, we may only have 113, I'm thinking maybe. I'm making that number
Yeah,
up.
let me be more specific, Ms. Prosnick. What I'm saying is we're not going to submit any classroom size waivers now for in-person. Could that change at the end of the second 9 weeks? Absolutely. And you remember, even in the past, the way classroom size waivers work is we might have submitted 7 last year, but then some kid moves in, and now we've got a class with 23. We've got to submit a new waiver for that. That will, but I don't think that's not going to happen anytime soon, because I think our classroom sizes for in-person still have a little wiggle room. But you're absolutely right. At the end of the second 9 weeks, if another 1,500 kids come back, there's going to be more juggling, and we might not can keep that. I was just talking about just at this specific time. Yeah.
I want to make a picture of that.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
If not, we'll move on. Thank you, Dr. Rapp. You're done. Yes.
Okay, we're going to ask Mr. Youngs to come
Yes.
forward, and
Mr. Fight.
Money.
Good evening, board members. If you'll recall, last summer, the board authorized the administration to go to the bond market and issue the remainder of the voter authorized but unissued bonds. That we did. We closed on those in August. So that money is in-house, and we told the board when we did that we'd bring to you some more information about projects that we would be able to move up in the calendar. And so Mr. Fight will be happy to do that this evening.
Absolutely. So thank you. It's good to be back in front of you.
Yeah.
So tonight we have a discussion item that our intent is to bring back as a consent item later this month. As Mr. Young said, we looked at the remainder of the projects, which was slated for year 5, and there's about 10 of those. Of those 10, there were about 3 that really made sense to kind of pull forward. The other 7, a lot of those were really tied to the summers, right? So 20-year refreshes, I mean, those are work that has to happen in the summer. Really was no advantage to kind of pull those forward. Since we've already begun the year 4 design, our thought was to also bring some architect selections for these for discussion tonight. And so I'll walk you through them. And so the first one is the Durham Middle School track replacement. The reason for pulling that one up is we have 2 other tracks that we're doing in year 4. Stantec is currently the architect on those, so our thought was just add that to their package, basically. The second one is the playground replacement at Wellington. We're currently working on the Wellington Elementary 20-year refresh, so it made a lot of sense to just go ahead and do that at the same time. Stantec is also the architect on that particular 20-year refresh. Our additional recommendation on that one would be, rather than put this back out on the street for our pool of CMARs to bid on, go ahead and add this by change order to Core Construction's contract. The reason being, we wouldn't want to, have 2 different contractors working on 2 different pieces of the building there. And then the third one that we felt like we could pull up was Lewisville High School Fine Arts addition and renovation. The thinking there was go ahead and start that hopefully in late summer or fall of 2021 with the addition first, and then roll into the renovation that following summer. Again, Stantec is already working on. They've pretty much had all of our fine arts packages, so it sounds like a lot of Stantec tonight, but I can assure you we've certainly balanced the project workload throughout this entire bond. So those would be our recommendations, these 3 projects, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, Ms. Hassett, do you want to start?
I have no questions. I'm glad you have pulled these up. I wish we could have done more faster, but I understand why not. Thank you.
Ms. Prosnick?
Wellington has a sunshade. This will be the first playground that we're replacing where there's a sunshade.
We've actually done a couple already, and what we try to do is maximize the amount of play surface that goes under the existing sunshades.
So we're not replacing the sunshade.
Right.
I guess that's my question. The sunshade is not included
No,
in
it's
the
not included.
replacement of this.
Right.
And then, just remind me, who are the architects at LHS for the outlying buildings there at the, is it Stantec?
Huckabee on
It's
that one.
Huckabee
Yeah,
on that.
The ancillary, the athletics project?
Yes.
Ma'am.
Okay, so 2 different architects
Right.
on the same, I'm just saying on the same, with
Yes.
exterior
Right.
site. That's my question.
The reason for our recommendation of Stantec is just because all of the fine arts packages as a whole, and really the in-depth study that we're doing into the ed specs right now with Ms. Drinkwater, they've really been on board for that entire conversation. And so, and there's a lot of that conversation going on with, we're currently working on Hebron and Flower Mound, and they also did the Colony. And so it just made a lot of sense. They already know how we adapt those ed specs to these additions and renovations was kind of the thinking there.
I just don't want it to look piecemealed.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely.
That's all.
Ms. Cox?
What are we anticipating completion dates on each of these?
So the track replacement and playground replacements obviously will be done next summer of 2021. The Lewisville High School Fine Arts, like I say, will hopefully start late summer, fall of 2021, and then the plan right now would be for completion of the end of summer 2022.
Mrs. Sun?
Nope, I don't have anything.
Quick, Miller.
Yeah. Do you have any questions on the, okay. Okay. And me either. Does anybody have any other questions?
No. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thanks, Randy.
Thank you, Randy. We're excited to move those projects along a little bit faster. If I can draw your attention to the sideways legal document. This is the heart of the refunding that we're going to be talking about this evening and bringing to you for your approval on the 19th. Let me draw your attention to column 1 on the far left. That's our existing debt service. The colored columns in the middle, columns 2 through 15, are the refundings of 2013E in the blue columns and 2013B in the buff or beige columns. But if you look at column 1 and then column 16, you'll see the difference that the refunding makes in the annual debt service. And then the savings are in column 17 out to the far right. So you can see the savings, $800,000 a year, $900,000 a year, in a couple of years are over $1 million. The sum of column 17 in the bottom right hand is $7.9 million. So column 1 minus column 2 is the savings column 16 equals column 17. So let's look at columns 2 through 8. This is issue number 213E. This is a taxable advance refunding with the permanent school fund guarantee. We're refunding this a little bit early. When you refund early, it's like paying some mortgages early. There's a little bit of a penalty, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. So 2013E is in columns 2 through 8, and then 2013B is 9 through 15. 2013B is a taxable refunding, and when I say taxable, what I mean is the interest earned by the people that invest in this pay tax on this. Normally, people who buy school district bonds don't pay tax. It's a municipal debt, so they have interest and they don't pay tax, but these will be taxable. The 2013B is a refunding of a refunding. In other words, we're doing this a second time. When you do a refunding of a refund, it becomes taxable. So columns 9 through 15 are non-PSF. They don't have the permanent school fund guarantee, and that's issue 2013B. So down at the bottom in the footnotes, you can see some blue notes that are shaded in blue. You can see the all-in TIC, the TIC, total interest cost, 1.5189 on the blue. There's some negative arbitrage. The bottom line in the blue you can see is $897,000, 15% of NPV savings. We'd like that number to be less than 20% of NPV savings, which it is. The buff paragraph down there, or the beige paragraph, the all-in TIC is 1.1794. That's the total interest cost. We have some negative arbitrage there as well, $300,000. Essentially, this is the cost of paying these off early. And then that number in the yellow column out to the far right, the $7.9 million in savings, is net of paying that negative arbitrage. So
And
let me
column
pause
17?
there and ask if there's any
Column
questions.
17 is net of?
It's net.
Net of,
Yes,
17.
that's after paying the negative arbitrage. So we'll save $8 million spread over 10 years. You can see the debt service goes down a tiny bit from $157 million a year to $156 million. So we're saving a little bit of money. Certainly worth doing, but it doesn't alter our annual debt service enormously. But it's still economic. Inside of the parameters, we're going to present for the board 2014A and 2014B as well. Those two issues are not, quote, in the money, meaning they don't fit the parameters that we'll bring to you. The parameters are maximum principal of $152 million to get refunded, maximum maturity of 20,030. Maximum all-in TIC is going to be 2%, so we think we'll be under 2, just like we did last summer. NPV savings of 10%, that's net present value savings of 10. 5 is good here, 10 is great, 15 is wonderful. Last summer, what did we get? What was our NPV savings last summer, do you remember?
I just don't remember.
it was attractive. It was a good day in the market for us. So a 10% NPV as a parameter is a very good number to hit. So let me pause there and ask if there's any questions.
Start with Ms. President.
Do you want all of my questions or just one at a time?
I've
got like 15, so that's why I'm asking.
Let's do a couple.
Okay. I want to know why we're doing it now instead of waiting and doing it closer to August 15th, because we wouldn't have some of these penalties in here. And that's because this gives us no flexibility. We don't know I'll be blunt, I don't know what the legislature's going to do. I don't know what the election's going to do. There's so many variables out there that could affect this refunding that we don't have to do it right now. So my question is, why right now?
Go ahead, John.
Great question. The issue here, the issues that are being considered are not callable until 2022, okay? So we would have to wait until August of 2022 to get to those bonds. What's happened in the bond markets and the interest rate environment is interest rates have plummeted so low, and on a tax-exempt and a taxable basis. So you're seeing a slew of these taxable advance refundings being done for exactly that reason. As in the interest of full disclosure, we've talked about negative arbitrage. So that's a real important number. It's kind of hard to explain, but I'll do my best on top of what Mark's already explained. It is an opportunity cost, okay? So in other words, what that says, that if your crystal ball says that if in 2022 interest rates are at or below where they are right now,
That's what Mr. Powell says.
then you will achieve that much more savings.
Right.
Okay? So you walk into the casino and you determine, are you going to bet on red or black, right? Are you going to bet on the rate's going to be in August of 2022 at or better where they are, or are they higher? If they're higher, you made a bad bet, right? If they're lower, you shoulda, woulda, coulda, right? What we've done is we took the 2013 E's and 2013 B's. The 2014s are a maybe. There's another couple of issues out there. We ran numbers 18 different ways. We took the most conservative approach because, to your point, there is so many other things and so many other pieces of debt. You all have a lot of moving parts in your debt
Right.
portfolio, right? So there's no reason, whereas we're doing, Michael, 7 of these right now for other school districts, but most of these have 1 or 2 pieces of debt. You all are different. You have 20 pieces of debt. So it's a little more complex, and there's no reason not to be patient and wait for some of these others to come into the money. So that is why we set these at really as the bogey to be having at least 10% net present value savings, which is very high, and with at least a 20% negative arbitrage. We're seeing a bunch of these that are there's a number of districts around that are having negative arbitrage 40% more, 40% or more. So we've taken a very conservative approach. You know, interest rates have gone up a little bit in the last, they've gone up about 20 basis points in the last 6 weeks or so.
Okay, so that's the math question. How many basis points does it need to go up in order, do you know what I'm saying? How many basis points does it need to go up in order for us not to see, if we waited to do the refunding or paid them off, which we could also do?
Not until 2022.
In 2022. But how many basis points does it need to go up? Because that's a math problem.
So it's that piece of it. Are you talking about to eliminate the negative arbitrage piece?
Mm-hmm.
So that's that's on the short term in the escrow to fund the payment of those bonds till 2022. So that would require a considerable amount of
So 50?
Short-term rates. That'd be what your 2-year treasury would probably have to go up 50 basis points what would end up happening to the yield curve. This deal would fall out of the money. So you can't have your cake and eat it too.
Well, I understand that, but I mean, the Fed, Jay Powell, has said that federal rates are going to hold for 2 years.
Right.
And his little committee and all that stuff said that there were no indications that indicated that those rates would go up.
And Biden wins, and it changes everything.
And the legislature comes in and it changes everything. I mean, that's just the way it goes. I'm not.
Legislature won't change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was
Go
that
ahead.
one question? Ms. Cox, do you have any questions?
So kind of on the lines of what Ms. Prosnick said, I never like to gamble or do any of that, especially with school district money. But if we waited, could we wait past the election? Because as we know, the rates are not going to change through the end of the year.
So why wait until after the election? If rates aren't going to change.
I'm just saying, so would that help? So it's either 2022 or we still pay this amount.
So essentially, we're paying the $1.2 million of negative arbitrage to save $8 million.
Well, you're not really paying it.
I know, but it's
a
negative
penalty.
arbitrage. It's a penalty.
But if we wait, would that not be less than 1.2?
You don't know. That's
But
the
it's
risk you
50. But 50 basis points. I mean, that's a jump.
I always like to see scenarios. So, for me, I would like to see the case scenario of, okay, if we waited and maybe even if we paid them off, as Ms. Prosnick said earlier, what does that look like compared to this? I'd really like, before I could, make a good decision for myself. I mean, this looks really good.
And we can
but-
provide that for you.
Yeah.
I mean, we can provide stress tests in terms of showing what happens if interest rates go up 25 basis points, go down 25 basis points. We do that all the time.
Right.
And again, what we're trying to show you is really more of anything else, a bird in the hand, the most simplified, most conservative approach you could serve without really, any riverboat gambling involved at all.
Right.
Ms. Lasan?
Actually, you answered my question, because I was just going to reiterate that I was understanding that right, that we're paying about 1.2 million, but we're going to save almost 8 million. Okay. So, okay.
Mr. Miller?
I would agree with Ms. Cox. I'd like to see the scenarios. I think it would be disadvantageous for us to not do a recommendation that you're bringing forward. I know we can run all these kind of hypotheticals and have our external consultants and everything. I'm assuming that we've done this before, by the way. We used to do it. If we don't have the money to pay down the debt, which would have been our preferred option, I get that we could hold the money and pay down debt in the future. The hypotheticals right now, none of us would make this type of decision in our own environment. We would not sit on high debt. We would pay it down because of what we know. We would refinance our home and pay heavy points to do that because we know that the long-term benefit is 1% interest or 1.5% or whatever it is. Therefore, we pay a higher amount of money up front versus a market that's a little more stable where, hey, you can pay it, you can close for a point versus 2 points. You see the metaphor here? And I think we have to take the expertise given to us here and, unless it's wildly wrong, move forward with it. We've had a great couple years of paying down debt. And kudos to staff, John, you and everybody, and Kevin. We've done what we've said we want to do. Christy, I think you were on that bandwagon as well, and Jenny. So I hate to see us spend a lot of time on this when, I do think the scenarios of what do they look like are important. But hopefully we can get it done and move on with it.
Okay.
Timeline. Originally, when were you thinking of pulling the trigger on this one?
The timeline would be approval, and we could bring the alternatives to you, the scenarios, on the 19th. If you were to approve it on the 19th, we would price on the 22nd and close before the end of November.
Before the end, so still after the election, and
Yeah,
occasionally
Before the election. So
Before
we
the
are
election.
pricing,
Or
we are
the end of the
going
month.
to market. We are
Before
getting
the
in
election.
before November 4th.
because occasionally during election time, markets.
Things get squirrely.
2016, the bond market lost 35 to 40 basis points and didn't come back till February. It went away for several months. So there was a whole quarter that was lost because interest rates went up right after the election.
And if we are, I like running the numbers. I like numbers. If we go ahead and run some more numbers to get more information, how would that influence the timeline?
I don't think it would influence the timeline at all. We'd show you additional scenarios on the 19th,
Okay.
and you could make the decision then, and then we'd price on October 22nd, well in front of the election.
Right.
We can get the scenarios run and send them right out to you guys in the next couple of days. That's
Yeah,
I prefer not
John
to-
will provide that information.
I
to
prefer
y'all,
not to pay
certainly.
arbitrage. It's not my favorite. But I definitely understand. I don't think that in 22 months, we'll still have numbers that beat this. I just don't see that happening personally, with all my financial experience. Our crystal ball.
It's really the trade-off, Ms. Hassett, too, and, you know, in terms of, again, you all have a large debt portfolio of a lot of different bonds that we're gonna leave alone.
Right.
And knowing that we're gonna put those, you know, and save those to know that we can get to those later on as well.
Right.
These were the real low-hanging fruit that
Right.
were just seemed real obvious to us that we should present this to you.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I would like different scenarios. My main question was what would be the argument for not doing, and I think that's been hit on a lot. And so I would like to see the different scenarios, and I would maybe propose for time's sake, we are going to have somebody waiting here in a little bit, since they're going to run scenarios.
I have one more scenario I want them to run then.
Okay. And I was going to say, if you would like to submit your questions, since we will be doing that, and I think that would be very helpful. If any of her questions you believe need to be shared with the board, if you would do that, Mr. Young.
My main other scenario is, what does it look like? Because some of this is, I don't want to say, but we could certainly pay off very easily some of these series of bonds. So just like we did the last time where we saved some of that money from not doing the second transaction, et cetera, I'd like to see what that look. Now I know we can't pay them off till May of 2022, but what is our strategy then to pay off? What could be our strategy to pay off some of this? I guess that's mine.
I like
We can look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can show you that there's all these other bonds that are available to you to pay cash for. And so this
Yeah.
being out for another 2 years made sense because you'll have bonds eligible for redemption before 2 years that
Okay.
you'll be able to redeem and pay
And we
off
can use
like
the
you
money
have.
for that.
I guess I'm just looking at this deal right now that's been put in front of us. Thank you.
But I like the addition of
Yeah.
what you're, if you're going to run her scenario,
Yeah.
give me
Yeah,
all the
you
information.
I guess,
Give me
yes,
all.
I'd like to see what that,
The whole picture.
I guess that's what we've always
Paint me a
kind of
picture.
asked for is I feel, to Mr. Miller's point, when we look at the mosaic, I feel like I'm just getting a spotlight on these bonds. I'd like to see then, what's the whole plan? Because then maybe you can get me to buy into it.
It's your call, not mine.
We would probably need to schedule a board workshop on that, and Ms. Sells, because that's probably going to take a little while to.
Took one
to
off,
give the
we can
whole
add one
plan.
back.
But I think y'all have some questions that you can provide some insight.
Got marching orders, we'll
Yeah.
proceed.
Thank you so much, both of
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate the work.
That is all of our discussion items, but I am going to call about a 10-minute recess before we reconvene back into closed session, and that we will be doing that in the think spot.
Sweater. My leg is a
We will now convene into closed session as authorized by Texas Government Code Section 551, specifically 551.074. The time is now 7:51 p.m. Wait,
Wait, we gotta adjourn.
wait, I gotta
Now I'd like to
find
call
my-
the meeting back into open session. Here you go.
Okay, I'm going to call this meeting back into session at 9:34 PM, but if there is no other board business, we will adjourn at 9:34 PM.
Wow, you did it all within a minute.
9:34, 9:34. Okay,
Is that your homecoming wave?
okay, I'm going to have some. Yeah, here, stick it on here.
What's tomorrow? No.
I'm having some snacks. That drove me to want to eat.